Imagine this. You walk into a crowded room. Everyone is laughing, chatting, moving from one conversation to another. But in the corner, there's someone sitting quietly, maybe with a drink in their hand, listening more than they speak. They don't look uncomfortable, but they also don't feel the need to join the noise. This person isn't shy. They aren't antisocial. They are what Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychologist, called an introvert. Now here how, yes, the twist most people don't know. Jung never saw introversion as a weakness. In fact, he believed introverts lived some of the most difficult but also most interesting lives of all personality types. Why? Because introverts constantly struggle between the outer world's demands and their inner world's depth. Let's break this down. Jung's original definition of introverts. Carl Jung was the first to formally use the word introvert in psychology, but he didn't mean someone just shy. For Jung, an introvert was someone who draws energy from within rather than from external stimulation. Extroverts get charged up at parties, meetings, and group activities. Introverts? They recharge by being alone, by thinking deeply, by exploring their imagination. Jung once wrote, "The introvert's life is not governed by what he sees around him, but by the images and ideas that arise from within himself." This means an introvert can look calm and quiet on the outside, but inside, their mind is like an entire universe, full of ideas, connections, and reflections. And that inner richness is both their greatest strength and their heaviest burden. The difficult side of being an introvert. Let's be honest. Modern society is built for extroverts. Schools reward kids who raise their hands first. Offices celebrate people who speak up in meetings, even if they don't always have the best ideas. Social media thrives on constant noise, photos, and sharing. In all of this, the introvert often feels like an outsider. Carl Jung observed this more than 100 years ago. He noticed that introverts often struggle with social misunderstanding. People think they are cold, arrogant, or shy. Energy drain. After too much social interaction, they feel exhausted. Pressure to perform. Society pushes them to act more extroverted. But here's where it gets fascinating. Jung said these struggles make the introvert's life difficult. Yes, but also uniquely interesting. Why? Because while extroverts are busy navigating the outside world, introverts are explorers of the inner world, the world of ideas, imagination, creativity, and psychology itself. The hidden strength of introverts. Let me ask you this. Who do you think makes the best inventors, writers, philosophers, and even spiritual leaders? The ones who spend all their time in crowds, or the ones who can sit alone for hours, diving deep into thought? History shows us that many of the greatest breakthroughs come from introverted minds. Albert Einstein, who said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." J.K. Rowling, who dreamt up Harry Potter while sitting alone on a train. And even Carl Jung himself, who spent endless hours in solitude writing his Red Book, a masterpiece of inner exploration. Introverts may not always be loud in the outside world, but in the inner world, they are giants. Jung's warning about introverts. But Jung also gave a warning. He said that introverts can sometimes get trapped in their inner world. Because they rely so much on imagination, reflection, and analysis, they risk becoming disconnected from reality. Jung wrote about patients who had incredible ideas and insights, but struggled to function in day-to-day life. In other words, being an introvert is like having a powerful microscope. You can see details others miss, emotional patterns, deep truths, hidden meanings. But if you never look up from the microscope, you miss the bigger picture of life around you. That balance is the introvert's lifelong challenge. A story from Jung's practice. To make this real, let's look at one of Jung's cases. He once worked with a man who was highly introverted, a brilliant thinker, full of insights about philosophy and religion. This man could talk for hours about the mysteries of the human soul, but in his personal life, he was isolated, unhappy, and unable to maintain friendships. Jung realized this man's gift, his inner depth, was also his curse. The more he lived inside his thoughts, the more distant he became from people. Jung's goal wasn't to fix his introversion, but to help him balance it, to use his deep insights without losing touch with the outside world. And that's the paradox of introverts. They often suffer more deeply, but they also understand life more deeply. Why introverts' lives are interesting. So, what makes introverts' lives so interesting, despite the difficulties? It's this constant tension between the inner and outer worlds. They're like bridge builders between imagination and reality. An introvert at a party might not talk much, but later they'll write a poem that captures the exact mood of that evening better than anyone else could. An introvert may not dominate the meeting room, but they'll quietly come up with a strategy that saves the entire project. They may not have 100 friends, but the friendships they do form are incredibly deep and loyal. Jung believed introverts live at the crossroads of suffering and wisdom, and while that makes their journey harder, it also makes it richer. Think about this. Imagine waking up in the morning already knowing that your energy is limited. Not because you are lazy, not because you don't care, but because you are an introvert living in an extrovert's world. Every phone call, every meeting, every unexpected conversation is like a small withdrawal from your emotional bank account. By the end of the day, you feel drained, even if you didn't do much. This, Carl Jung explained, is one of the central difficulties of being an introvert. Your mind is always working, always processing. While extroverts release their energy into the world, introverts absorb the world into themselves. And that constant inner processing is exhausting. Why introverts get misunderstood. Jung often said introverts face one of the greatest social burdens: misunderstanding. People around them misinterpret their silence as arrogance. They confuse solitude with loneliness. They mistake deep thought for disinterest. Picture this. An introvert is at work. The boss asks for ideas in a meeting. The extroverts immediately jump in, talking fast, bouncing ideas. The introvert stays quiet, thinking carefully, weighing possibilities. 10 minutes later, they might have the best idea in the room. But by then, the conversation has moved on. To outsiders, the introvert looks unprepared, disengaged, or even shy. But in reality, their mind was racing, just in a different way. Jung believed this misunderstanding creates a quiet kind of suffering in introverts. They constantly feel judged by a standard that was never meant for them. The mask introverts learn to wear. Here's the interesting part. Many introverts learn to put on what Jung called a persona, a kind of social mask. They smile more, talk more, pretend to be more outgoing than they really are. Not because they want to, but because they feel they have to in order to survive in school, at work, or even among friends. But here's the danger Jung pointed out. The longer an introvert wears this mask, the more they risk losing touch with their true self. They might become socially successful, but inside, they feel fake and empty. Jung warned, the persona is a complicated system of relations between individual consciousness and society, but it is not the real self. For introverts, this means one of their hardest battles is to stay authentic, to balance between adapting to the world without completely betraying their own nature. Energy and social overload. Let's dive deeper into energy. Extroverts gain energy from crowds, noise, and activity. Introverts, they lose energy in those same situations. That's why, after a party or a day of meetings, an introvert often feels completely wiped out. They need alone time to recharge, like plugging a phone into a charger. But here's where the difficulty comes in. Society doesn't always respect this need. Friends might say, "Come on, don't be boring, stay a little longer." Coworkers might push, "You should speak up more in meetings." Family might complain, "Why do you always want to be alone?" The introvert ends up caught in a cycle, pleasing others at the cost of their own energy. Jung believed this was one of the greatest challenges of introverted life, learning to protect their energy without feeling guilty. The beauty of solitude. But let's flip the perspective. While society may misunderstand solitude, Jung saw it as one of the most powerful tools an introvert has. He said solitude allows introverts to connect with their inner world, where creativity and self-discovery live. Think of solitude as the introvert's hidden superpower, a painter sitting alone in their studio for hours, creating something timeless, a writer retreating into silence and producing a story that touches millions. A thinker, like Jung himself, walking alone in the woods, discovering truths about human psychology that still guide us today. For Jung, solitude wasn't loneliness. It was transformation. He called it the place where the introvert's inner gold is found. A personal story. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever noticed how introverts often have secret talents that nobody knows about? Maybe they write poetry in a hidden notebook. Maybe they compose music at night. Maybe they think about life's mysteries in ways they never say out loud. Jung believed this hidden inner life is what makes introverts' journeys so interesting. Their silence hides worlds of meaning. Their calm hides storms of thought. One of Jung's patients was a quiet woman who barely spoke in social situations. People thought she was dull. But when she finally opened up to Jung, she revealed pages upon pages of poetry she had written in secret. It was powerful, emotional, and brilliant. The world never saw it, but it lived inside her like treasure. That's the paradox. Introverts may appear simple on the surface, but inside, their lives are rich and complex. Why their lives are both hard and beautiful. So here's the truth. Introverts live difficult lives because they are constantly swimming against the current of a loud, fast, and demanding world. But they live interesting lives because their inner world is so full of meaning, imagination, and wisdom. It's like being a traveler with two maps. The outer world demands you follow one route, loud, fast, busy. But your inner map pulls you another way, toward depth, stillness, and reflection. Following both maps at once is exhausting, but it also makes the introvert's journey unlike any other. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You are walking through a crowded marketplace, voices everywhere, colors flashing, people pushing past you. For many extroverts, this scene is energizing. They thrive in the noise. But for an introvert, it's overwhelming. They long to step away, to find a quiet alley where they can breathe and think. But here's the secret Carl Jung revealed. It is in those quiet alleys, away from the noise, that introverts find treasures others never discover. The gift of depth. Jung believed introverts are naturally drawn to the depths of life. While many people skim the surface, introverts dive deep into ideas, emotions, and experiences. This depth can sometimes feel like a burden because it makes simple things complicated. But it is also their hidden gift. Imagine two people watching a sunset. The extrovert might enjoy it, take a quick photo, and move on. The introvert? They may stand there for 20 minutes, feeling the beauty, connecting it to a memory, reflecting on the meaning of life itself. Jung said this depth of perception is why introverts often become philosophers, artists, writers, and psychologists. They see what others miss. They hear the whispers of the unconscious, not just the noise of the crowd. The shadow within. But with this gift comes danger. Jung famously introduced the concept of the shadow, the hidden, darker parts of ourselves we try to ignore. Introverts, because they spend so much time looking inward, are more likely to encounter their shadows.
Think about it. An introvert alone in their room may begin to hear not just their best thoughts, but also their darkest doubts. They may face insecurities, fears, and desires that frighten them.
For Jung, this confrontation with the shadow was not a weakness. It was a doorway to growth. He believed the most difficult but interesting part of an introvert's life is this inner battle, learning to face their shadow instead of running from it. Case example. Jung once described a man who lived a very quiet, reserved life. Outwardly, he seemed peaceful. But when Jung guided him through analysis, the man uncovered a well of hidden anger, jealousy, and regret. For years, he had pushed these feelings aside, pretending to be calm. But inside, the shadow had grown stronger. It was only when he acknowledged and integrated these dark feelings that he began to feel whole again. This is the introvert's challenge, to recognize that silence doesn't erase the shadow. It only makes it louder inside. The struggle with expression. Another difficulty Jung highlighted is that introverts often struggle to express their deepest thoughts. Imagine carrying a library inside your mind, filled with knowledge, imagination, and insight, but having no one to read it. That's what life feels like for many introverts. They want to share, but words fail them. They feel drained by shallow conversations. They hesitate to speak because they fear being misunderstood. So they hold their truths inside, where they remain hidden. And yet, this hiddenness is part of what makes their lives so fascinating. They live with unspoken worlds. Sometimes those worlds leak out through art, music, or writing. Sometimes, sadly, they never escape at all. Archetypes and inner symbols. Jung also spoke of archetypes, universal symbols that live in every human's unconscious. Introverts, being inward-focused, often experience these archetypes more vividly through dreams, imagination, and reflection. For example, an introvert may dream of a wise old man, symbolizing inner guidance, or of a shadowy figure, representing repressed parts of themselves, or of a child, symbolizing innocence and new beginnings. For Jung, these inner symbols were not random, they were messages, and introverts, because of their sensitivity, were more open to hearing them. Why introverts often feel out of place? Let's be honest, introverts often feel like outsiders. While the world celebrates loudness, charm, and quick wit, introverts are celebrated less often. They may feel invisible in classrooms, ignored in meetings, or underestimated in relationships. But Jung suggested something powerful. Sometimes feeling out of place is exactly what puts you in the right place. Because when you are not lost in the noise, you have the chance to hear your own voice. It's no accident that many of history's greatest thinkers and creators were introverts. Albert Einstein, lost in thought, imagining the speed of light. Emily Dickinson, writing poems alone in her room that would later touch millions. Jung himself, spending hours in solitude, listening to dreams and visions that shaped psychology forever. The transformation journey. But here's where things get really interesting. Jung didn't see introverts as doomed to suffer in silence. He saw their lives as a hero's journey, a difficult road, but one that leads to deep transformation. He called this journey individuation, becoming your true self by integrating your inner world with the outer world. For introverts, individuation means learning to accept their need for solitude without guilt, face their shadows instead of hiding from them, express their gifts in a way the world can appreciate, and most importantly, honor their own nature instead of pretending to be someone else. This journey is not easy. It demands courage, but it is also what makes the life of an introvert so interesting. They live not just in the outer world, but in the inner one, and their task is to bring the two together. The beauty in struggle. So yes, the life of an introvert is difficult. They carry misunderstandings, loneliness, exhaustion, and shadows. But it is also fascinating because every difficulty hides a treasure. Every quiet moment hides a possibility. Every inner struggle hides a story worth telling. Jung believed introverts are like deep wells. From the surface, they may look plain, even ordinary. But if you lean closer, if you drop a stone and listen, you realize the well is bottomless, filled with water that can refresh the soul. Let's pause for a moment. If you've ever felt different, if you've ever felt like the world doesn't understand you, then remember this. Carl Jung didn't see introverts as weak, strange, or broken. He saw them as carriers of a rare gift, a gift that comes with both struggle and beauty. Embracing solitude. Without guilt. The first lesson Jung gives introverts is this. Solitude is not loneliness. In fact, it is medicine. In silence, the introvert heals. In stillness, they think clearly. In solitude, they find themselves again. So the next time someone says, "Why are you always alone?" remember this: you are not escaping the world, you are recharging so that you can face it with strength. Jung would say, never feel guilty for the space your soul needs. The power of listening inward. Introverts often feel like they don't belong because the world talks too loudly, too quickly. But Jung insisted that true wisdom comes not from the noise outside, but from listening inward. He wrote that dreams, intuitions, and feelings are messages from the unconscious. And introverts, because of their nature, are often closer to hearing those whispers. While others rush through life, introverts catch the deeper meaning. Ask yourself, how many times have you noticed a detail others missed? How many times have you felt something was wrong before anyone else did? That sensitivity is not weakness. It is insight. It is the quiet superpower Jung admired, the battle with the shadow. Now, let's face a hard truth. Jung never sugarcoated life. He knew that introverts face their shadow more directly, the hidden fears, insecurities, and dark thoughts that live within. And yes, this can feel heavy. Sometimes introverts carry battles inside that nobody sees. But Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This means the introvert's struggle with their shadow is not a curse, it is an opportunity. By facing what is dark within, they become stronger, wiser, and more authentic. The shadow, once integrated, becomes a source of power, finding a voice in a loud world. One of the hardest challenges introverts face is expressing themselves. How do you speak in a world that values speed over depth, volume over silence? Jung's answer was simple but profound. Don't force yourself to be loud. Be true. You may not speak often, but when you do, your words can carry weight. You may not dominate every conversation, but when you contribute, you bring depth others can't match. Jung believed that introverts must honor their natural style of expression, whether through writing, art, one-on-one conversations, or even quiet leadership. Remember, the world doesn't always need more noise. Sometimes it desperately needs the wisdom of silence. Individuation, the path to wholeness. At the heart of Jung's philosophy was the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are. For introverts, this means accepting both sides of themselves, the quiet, reflective inner world, and the necessary, sometimes uncomfortable outer world. Individuation is not about choosing one side. It is about integration. It's about being able to go into the world, contribute your gifts, and then return to solitude without losing yourself. Jung taught that when introverts learn this balance, they don't just survive, they flourish. They become whole. And when you are whole, your presence itself changes the world around you. A final story. Let me tell you a story. Jung once described a man who felt invisible all his life. He stayed quiet, avoided conflict, and lived mostly in his head. People overlooked him. But through therapy, he began writing down his thoughts, his dreams, his reflections. Over time, his notebooks filled with insights so powerful that they guided not just his own life, but also his children and students who later read them. He never became famous, but his quiet wisdom lived on, shaping lives silently. Jung would say, "This is the true beauty of an introverted life. You may not always be in the spotlight, but your depth creates ripples that reach far beyond you." The difficult but beautiful life. So yes, the life of an introvert is difficult. They fight misunderstandings, loneliness, exhaustion, and their own shadows. But it is also endlessly fascinating. They live in two worlds, the outer and the inner. They struggle, but they also create. They are often unseen, but never without value. Carl Jung's message to introverts is simple. Stay true to who you are. Don't waste energy pretending. Don't be ashamed of your depth. Don't hide your silence. Because in a world that often refuses to listen, introverts are the ones who carry the wisdom worth hearing. Closing words. So if you are an introvert listening to this right now, remember this. Your life may feel difficult, but it is also extraordinary. The very things that make you different are the things that make you valuable. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For introverts, that means embracing solitude, facing the shadow, and honoring the quiet power within. The world may not always understand you, but Jung would say, you don't live to fit the world, you live to become yourself.